just had got up and went to work like I always do. And I was working in Kentucky, about 20 miles in Kentucky. And my brother called me, and I wasn't able to take the call. I was pretty busy. We were trying to get that job done. We needed to finish the job. And he left me a message, so it was just a short time. I took a little break and listened to the message, and he had told me that the storm chasers were coming to town. Me and him were kind of weather bugs, you know. We think we should have been meteorologists. Not anymore, but I mean, I knew what that meant. And I called the boss and told him that I was leaving. I was going home. And come home, watch some TV and stuff, you know, watch what was going on. The cells were pretty far out early that morning, and had some lunch. She fixed lunch for me.
Not having any idea that it was going to be as severe as it was. We just knew there was, you know,
full potential.
Thunderstorms, you know, that type of stuff. That's what we were hearing and stuff. But, well, I mean, they did say supercells, but they weren't saying if you live in Henryville, take cover. They weren't saying that.
But I certainly knew the potential, and of course, you know, the warning I got from my brother. I mean, I knew to come home, and we had lunch and did this and did that, and all the way up to the time that the channel I was watching on TV or something went out, and the storms were, maybe, I don't know exactly where they were approaching, maybe Evansville or something, that area, and just something happened to the channel on the TV, and I quit watching it and said, you know, we're leaving, we're getting out of here. And, you know, we ham-hauled and this and that and everything.
Well, my parents had called and said they would like to go to the church. They live in Underwood, and they live in a trailer, so they don't have much protection around there. So they were going to ask if they could go to the basement of Mount Moriah Church like we were. And we said, fine, we'll meet you there. And then we didn't get out of there very soon after we left our home. It got it, but when we left, we seen the big black wall to the right, headed down the interstate.
We were leaving. You fixed your Coke. You had to have a diet, right? And, she fixed her drink and finally got out of there, and she was in the driver's seat. And I says, I'm going to drive. I want to drive. I had grabbed my video camera also on the way out, just in case in the distance there was a tornado and we might film it or something. And so she switched places, and we got right out of the driveway, went down, turned right, went to four-way stop, and I looked up over the highway because, you know, it's a hill from the four-way stop, and I looked, and it was just a big black wall. We couldn't see this because we were so low, you know, couldn't see that, but I mean, I knew that it was tornado. It's like, so we turned left, and I seen my buddy at the shop at Hills Auto, Jarv. Seen him at Hills Auto, and I was laying on the horn because it's like they didn't know. And I was laying on the horn, and I had my arm way out the window, you know, I was pointing back behind me, like, look behind me, look behind me. And as I drove on, I'd seen him come out to the road. Boy, they had a story. That was the two fellers that were holding on to the car right down there at Wolf Creek. Do you know where I'm talking about? Almost right here. I mean, it was unbelievable what happened to them. They were in the midst of it also. But and we seen that, and we took off
which is on Henryville
towards the
Tisco
church
Road,
building,
which is about 3 miles out that road before you find the church to the right.
up 160.
Heading out that way, heading towards Charlestown, but cutting back at Guthrie Building Supply, old time name, but.
So we headed up 160. I looked back, and, you know, we couldn't see, you know. And, I mean, it was going a fairly good rate speed, but I'm just sure that we'd get out there. Really, it should not have went that direction anyway. Like a due east direction, it really shouldn't have went that direction. And we got up there, and we got on
Mindy, our daughter, was riding on a bucket inside of our van because it was his work van and
We
there's
were in
just
my
two
work van.
seats. And she was watching it come closer and closer to us, and she was saying, "Daddy, it's coming, go faster, go faster." And
But we were
by
about,
this time, Steve was speeding up, and I was starting to get a little scared of these driving. And before we got to the church, there was a pickup truck carrying some appliance in the back of it in front of us, and he wasn't traveling very fast. So Steve ran around him, and I thought for sure we was gonna go in that ditch. And by this time, there was some rain, and the roads were slick, and we were going about 75 miles an hour trying to get to the church. And the whole time we were flying to get to the church, the black wall just kept getting closer and closer and closer.
but I mean, I'd seen it coming across the field once we were down the road a little ways, maybe a mile or 3/4 of a mile down Henryville Tisco Road. I seen the tornado, of course, coming across the field, and but it looked a pretty good distance. And then as we drove, I mean, it just seemed to be getting closer and closer. And I really thought it shouldn't be coming this direction, not this absolutely due east. It still looked like it was going maybe just a little bit towards the north, maybe away from us. But it's hard to tell. You're on a road, and it's, you know, you're doing this and driving fast, trying to look back. I wish Mindy was here. She was. She sure watched that thing the whole time. And I mean, if I don't tell anybody anything else, I will say you don't outrun a tornado. You don't outrun a tornado. But,
We were just spared by God,
yeah.
us and the 15 people in the basement.
We got right by the church building, and the last time I looked back, the house not very far off from just a short, what is it, a couple 100 yards, 300 yards maybe from the church building. There was a house, and it was coming apart. And didn't explode, but I could see the siding and stuff. See, the stuff was everywhere, and the house was coming apart. We ended up stopping. There was a truck half turned, and we stopped and waited for him. We could get around the building. We're screaming, hollering, get out of the van. Before it's ever stopped, get down there, and my daughter, she gets out pretty good. My wife gets out. She's going down the steps. Mindy gets out, passes her. Mindy goes in. I get Mindy in, the door slams. She's standing out there by herself, just for a second.
And winds.
The wind slammed the door, and I pushed the door open, pulled her in, and then I couldn't get the door shut. And I had both hands on it and pulled it, and just as it closed, the tornado wiped the top of the building out.
What did that sound like, feel like? What were all the sensations of that crazy few moments there?
Believe it or not, the people inside were actually pretty calm, considering everybody knew that, you know, things were bad. But we didn't realize how bad.
When we were coming in the building, they weren't really sure. Well, they knew there was some wind and stuff, but they really didn't know that there was a tornado up there.
Yeah.
So, and I hollered something. I was getting the door closed. The tornado's on us, or something like that. It's right. It's here. And I barely got the door shut and said that, and then just boom, boom. Nobody hollered. Nobody screamed. Everybody was really calm.
I was standing up because I got an injured finger. My finger felt like it was broken. My little pinky felt like it was broken. And it was swelling and bruising. And I was in a great deal of pain with my finger. And my mom was there, so I was standing up at the time the tornado took the top off the church. And I was showing her my hand, seeing if she could tell anything about it. And then the next thing we knew, you know, the windows were blew out, and we looked out, and all you seen was just church debris everywhere. And
by that time, I thought maybe it weakened a little bit from where it had destroyed our home, because it took our foundation.
we didn't know that our home had gotten blown
Right.
away yet.
But it pushed the church building. Now, it got down there, and then it did worse down there on y'all, but it just seemed to, I mean, it destroyed. Nothing come through. Nothing come through the
in the
floor.
basement, we were safe. Everybody was sitting there just unbelievably calm, considering what we just went through.
But it didn't, the noise, you said, what did it sound like? And it was
loud
loud,
noise.
but it was, vroom, and that was it. That was it. The stuff pushed and some stuff blew, but it just boom. That was it. I mean, as quick as I can do that, it was over. It wasn't bricks falling and boards slamming and this and that. It was just, and it was very loud, and it was
Then
very.
the water started coming through the ceilings. Where it came from, I don't know. But our feet, we were having to raise our feet because the water was flooding in the basement floor. And it wasn't long until we started smelling gas.
And the gas
Then we knew we
started.
had to get out, but we didn't know how we were going to get out because we realized that the basement door was blocked with all the debris. And where the men come from to help, I don't know, but Steve was a big help to everybody. And the next thing I know, they were escorting us out one by one, and some of us was having a hard time getting out because we couldn't hardly get through the area that was available to escape through, you know, and having to walk on glass and wood and everything that was from the building itself.
No,
And
not everybody was trapped in the building. It's you kind of get that feeling. I heard some people talking earlier, and not everyone was trapped in the building. Of course, when the gas started, I mean, we started smelling the gas. I mean, we knew we had to get out of there and get the gas shut off. So 2 or 3 of us got over and pushed the door open far enough to get out. And I was able to squeeze out of there and crawl up underneath the debris.
but there was some handicapped people in there that was having some hard times.
Yes, there was older people in there.
Older ladies and stuff that
some
couldn't get
handicapped
out
people.
hardly.
And as many times as I have looked at that gas tank, hundreds, probably thousands of times, you know, got out there, got up on the street, was going to go shut the gas off, and I could not remember where that gas tank was. There was some feller standing in the middle of the road, just standing there. I said, "We need to shut that gas off. It's leaking bad in the basement." I says, "Somebody did light a cigarette. They got on.
Yeah, somebody
and
was
put it out."
smoking.
Because I said, "Don't anybody light a cigarette. Just hold on. Let's get this." Because everybody couldn't get out. Everybody couldn't get out of there. And that fella, I says, "We need to shut the gas off. We got a gas leak in the basement." I said, "I can't remember where the tank is." He goes, "I know where it is." He said, "I'll shut it off." And around the building he went, and I went with him. And as soon as we started walking on the side, of course, I remembered where the tank was. But he was right there and went and shut the tank off. I did not recognize him and don't ever remember seeing him again. But he did shut the gas off. I'm really thinking that, I don't know, we could have went straight through that light and been out of harm's way, and I really knew it.
But we
So,
were supposed to meet our parents at the church.
But
My parents.
I don't know. I just can't figure out why. I mean, looking back, I mean, I've told her and my family. I mean, I think probably the gas leak, maybe the gas leak. That I just felt like God just let us.
Oh, yeah.
Let us out there. 'Cause,
Definitely. I mean,
the hand of God saved us anyway before we ever got in the building.
he
Houses
kept
were
that
coming
wind
apart.
from.
Things was flying overhead. Time we was down by the church, trees were flying. It was just unbelievable. And we had so much time with the tornado 150, 200 yards behind us. We had way too much time to get in the building.
It was as if he held the winds back long enough for my family to be
I mean,
safe. The
there's-
last family in the church
That's
building.
not an exaggeration.
The
It's-
last ones, you know,
certainly
before
true.
the building collapsed. And
Of course, he surely showed himself later on also too, really strong. Just revealed
So-
himself to us.
You got out of the church and then you immediately, I guess, wanted to know what happened to your house. Did someone take you to your house or what happened?
we couldn't go there.
Why, it was really sad. There was some guy that come in somehow from the other side, not from the Hennerville side, but come in from the other side in a truck. I don't know who that feller was, but he come down there and started telling the story that the school had been destroyed and several children were dead. So that's somehow out there because you couldn't get out of there.
We had
We
no
were
form
stuck
of communication.
for hours and hours.
Nobody
no
had
communication.
service.
But it wasn't long. That bad rumor did not last long. Maybe within 20 or 30 minutes, someone come running. They had run 4 miles By the time they got to us, said that they had run 4 miles solid in and out of the road and the fields to let us know that that was not true, to let everybody back in the area know that that wasn't true, that kids were not killed at the school, even though the school was severely damaged. So he let us know that. And he's, at that time, when then we knew that was true. He'd come that distance. He had heard that. That got all the way back out to where he was, that rumor. And of course, I knew when they said, when I knew there was that kind of damage to the school, I knew the house was gone. It was just on the west side of the newest addition. So
where did you go that night when you left Mount Moriah, and what happened over the next couple of days?
Well, we went to his sister's house, which we were going to spend the night there. But her daughter and her family were there, who also had damage from the tornado. So there really wasn't room for everybody. And so we had them take us to Scottsburg to a motel. And we stayed there overnight. It also crushed our van on the outside with the debris right on the roof of our van, so we didn't have a vehicle.
the van was holding just enough of that. It was holding that part of the structure, because I parked right in front of the doors. It's the only thing that it left. It held enough of it up that I could crawl underneath the debris and get out and get the gas shut off. It was the only way out of the building at the time. Couldn't get out the windows. The steps, of course, had collapsed. It was all bricks. I mean, there was no way. There was no other way. So it really, the van getting destroyed was a blessing.
And there was other cars that were destroyed that had been sitting in the parking lot. And then somebody, one of the relatives' work, put us up in a motel in Sellersburg after that night. We were there like 3.5 weeks, and they were people so generous to us, donating all kinds of items to us. We didn't have, when we left that night, we had a Bible, a video camera, our clothes on our back, and an umbrella.
Your purse.
And my purse. That's what we were able to take with us that night. Everything else was gone. We couldn't get to our house to see what we did have left, which our belongings were scattered, pushed into the school, and we lived right beside the school, the property right beside.
We had some things come back from a couple other states.
Believe it or not, we had some wedding pictures come back in from
Michigan.
Michigan. Someone sent them to us. And
Mindy's Hustlin' Hornet Award.
our youngest daughter's award from high school come back from Cincinnati, Ohio. And
He told her on Facebook, and it was kind of a big deal. I don't know what all was going on that he didn't want to send it back. He wanted to keep it for a souvenir and everything, the guy that found it. And then it was, what was it, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Shows up at our house, special package. He had took and framed it and sent it to her.
And
All of our wedding pictures come back from Michigan, and our honeymoon pictures unscathed.
and that was a miracle in itself that they went that far.
Well, I think they've landed on a truck or something. I think from east of where we were, and that's just my opinion. I don't know. People ask me
So
how
that
that
was
happened.
a good thing that happened. But
I had surgery.
fortunately, we were insured, and we're still working with our insurance company.
But you've got a new house now?
Yes, we just closed yesterday. We will not get to move in until the first week in July. They have to get their belongings out, and then we want to do some changing of some flooring and different work within the house that we want to do before we move in, and then we'll be able to move in. And it's been a very stressful year for us both.
Yeah, I mean, we've got
Me and him. His health
6
right after
months.
after the tornado, he had a gallbladder operation that went wrong, and We about lost him right after the tornado. Like the Monday after it was on the Friday, I think. It was on a Friday, I think. Wasn't it? It was on
Yeah,
a
it was
Friday.
scheduled. Everybody told me to
And,
go have it.
So we were dealing with that stress and then my health. And
We were over 6 months in the hospital and recovering from the hospitals
yeah, between the both of us
Combined.
this past year.
collectively.
And I had the what they call the
Post,
stress syndrome,
Post-
postpartum stress syndrome,
no, post-traumatic.
post-traumatic stress syndrome, post-traumatic stress syndrome.
So you're still working on that. It's gonna be a long time. I know.
Mhm.
So, what have you guys learned about yourselves going through all this?
Um, I've learned that our lives were spared. I really feel by God. Considering twice we were in danger during that tornado. Well, actually 3 times on the road to get there. And I feel like it's taught us that we can live without all this material things that we think we can't. That we can live without those things. And that our life is the most precious thing that we have. And our family's life. And I think it's taught us to be strong during a time like this, to when the stress hits, and there's so much of it, or it was for me, so very much of it. I didn't handle it very well. Even though I survived, I was grateful that I survived, but I was his health, my health, just the belongings, everything, the house being gone, and watching it on TV. And I remember one picture that the only thing I seen was my kitchen sink that was just shooting water straight up in the air in my yard. And they kept repeating that picture over and over and over. And then I would say, there's our sink, and things like that. But Henryville was very fortunate that even though we had a lot of damage done, even though we did lose a life, it could have been a lot worse. Those children could have got trapped in that school, or anything could have happened,
So, what do you think this community has learned? How is it different?
Well, to be honest with you, we have left this community since it happened for a whole year now. We've lived in Memphis. And even though we come back frequently and through Henryville, us ourselves, we haven't been too involved with much of the community like maybe we should have been. Only because we were dealing with so much stress ourselves that we just weren't capable of doing that. And
A small community, everybody says, everybody knows everybody knows everybody. Everybody don't know everybody. Everybody thinks they know everybody. They listen to rumors, and they listen to this, and they listen to that. But we live in a fast-paced world today, and there's a lot going on, and, mom and dad's both working, and it's, we've straggled away from our neighbors. We might know their names and talk to them once in a while over the fence or something, but we don't get together and, watch TV and go on picnics together and talk to our neighbors and care for our neighbors. And then, you hear, you don't know your neighbors no more. You gotta lock your doors. You got this. You got that. But the moment that anything, it's not a tornado. It's a fire. It's maybe a death in your family. Maybe it's just high water. Maybe somebody's just scared for you and says, hey, come to my place. You'll be safer here. You're not safe there. Come to my place. Then something like this reminds you that who your neighbors are. And it's everyone in the community. And I have seen a lot. And was fortunate to be able to participate at the 10 out of Mount Moriah for a while, and heard so many stories, heard so much about, it's just so many stories about one helping another, neighbors helping each other. And and then you find out that you're just not neighbors in a community, that you're neighbors worldwide. We had people help us graciously that will never see our face, that will never know us.
Yes, we did.
Just wanted to be our neighbor. So I think I see this community opening their doors and their hearts to each other more. They had, like all other communities, that was tapering off. We live in a different world today, and people are overall, people are more to themselves because of all that is going on. And but I see that happening here.
Well, I see too, people have, reached out and helped the best that they could, to help with what they knew what to do. A lot of people didn't know how to do, what to say, or how you were feeling, or just how traumatic the experience was for you.
A lot of them were
I
there.
don't think they could totally understand that unless they were a victim.
So, if somebody's looking at this like 50 years from now, what do you want them to remember about this crisis and how you all came through it?
For me, first and foremost, being a believer, I felt so small. All that control and all the security that I could give my family all those years, I wasn't doing that. I thought for years that I was, but I really wasn't, that God was doing that. And he proved that in a short time. He proved who was in control. He proved who's in control. And he takes care of us. He's the one that keeps us safe. And everything's in his time. And that's really the honest truth there.
He works all things to the good to those who love him. And that's what's come out of this, is goodness.
Yes.
Now. We've relocated now almost. We're slowly getting our belongings back in order. Our lives were spared. Our vehicles are replaced. Things are better. We were very poor. Our house needed work. The house we got now is in a much better shape, and and we've learned new friends. Ones that would reach out and help.
And that's what you want to do. You want to reach out to your friends, your family, you spend time with them, because sometimes you look up and that's what you have. Your neighbors, your family, your friends, your God. That's what you have. Everything else is somewhere else. And Shirley has taught us a job about, possessions and all. And not that we had major possessions, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you have, you think you don't want it scattered. You think you don't want it gone. But we learned where our values were, because we called and we just want to know about our families. Tell us about our families. Tell us about our friends. We want to know, the house blew away, but what about Tanya? Is she okay? Both vehicles ended up somehow where the house was and destroyed. But tell me about Tanya. Tell me about Leanne. Is everybody okay? Is everybody okay? So God spared us all. He spared a community. He spared a community. Not to take anything from the hunters. God rest his soul. But the Lord spared a community here. And I think the community is awakened to that. heard one of my daughters speaking about that just a little bit. I think the community's awakened to that. But the stories, the timing stories, there were so many. Just, if I hadn't done this, we hadn't done this. If that hadn't been this way, when we turned around, we did this. Just, I heard over and over and over and over and over. If that someone had done something just the slightest bit differently, you know, and it was really awesome. I'd say in 50 years, don't take anything for granted. Don't take your friends, your family, your community for granted. Don't do it. You look up in an instant and not have any of it. Adore it, love it, cherish it while you have it. Quit clinging to stuff that burns up and rots and rusts and blows away. That's what I would say.
And take cover quickly when you hear it firsthand. Don't delay. Seek cover.
We just lost 3 storm chasers, last week? Very experienced storm chasers. So, yeah, don't take those warnings lightly. The weather's different than it used to be anyway, you know. You never really know what's going to happen. So be prepared. Be prepared. More than one way. Find your Savior. Find your Savior. He loves you.